all the times of doing this, I'm never quite sure if everything's going to work out. So I hope everybody's having a great day. Of course, we are a little more than 1 week from Thanksgiving. I'm wondering if all of you have your arrangements already made. Are you going somewhere? Are you doing the cooking? Are you taking something to somebody else's house? I wonder. And hello, Carrie and Tanya and Fishing and Concha and Carol and Laura. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. For me next week, hello, LaFord. I will be, I think, going to my brother's place. His wife is going to be having Thanksgiving, and that's about a 15 to 20 minute drive from me. Paula, Jasmine, what's going on? You should know that there will be an episode next week, even though it's Thanksgiving. In fact, I am doing the interview for next Friday's episode tonight after this program. So I'm going to, unlike recent shows, YouTube shows where we went like an hour and a half, I'm going to have to get this done by about 5 till 10 Eastern time because I am conducting the interview for next week. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about actually next week's episode once the real show starts going. Heather, hello Heather, LaFord, and Indy, Annette. Thanks for, LaFord says she's volunteering and then cooking. Good for you, LaFord. Hello, Susan. I don't think that Cherie is going to be in here tonight. She had told me yesterday that she has something going on tonight. So I'm going to have to monitor this all on my own, and I hope I can do that because she's the one that usually keeps track of the comments and everything that's going on. But I don't think she's going to be here tonight. But we still have 1 more minute until actual play time. The actual running time of when this is supposed to start. I know that people see 9 p.m. and they may not realize that we sometimes get in here a little earlier. And if anybody is watching this after the fact, maybe you're new to YouTube and new to Unfound, that the show that you're watching now is live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is part of what I've been doing for a long time, in addition to the episodes that come out every Friday. This gives you, I think this gives everybody a little bit behind the scenes of what goes on at Unfound. Maybe gives everyone a little bit of an opportunity to maybe get to know me a little better, which may be helpful in listening to the episodes. If you know how I think, maybe get to see I don't know, my personality, how I answer questions from the audience and things like that, in contrast to me reading at the beginning of an episode, then doing an interview, and then just doing a summation at the end. I think this is the show maybe gives a little bit more about who I am and why I do it and how I think and things like that. And I try to be entertaining on this YouTube show, whereas with the Friday episodes, my goal is to be informative. So who else is in here? Tracy, Full Metal, Sharon. How's everybody doing? Thanks for tuning in tonight. It's gotten a little cool here. I guess it's starting time. It's gotten a little cool here in the Clearwater area. And in fact, last weekend when I played disc golf up in Ocala, I actually had to wear a long sleeve shirt to play. It was in the 50s, and that felt a little more comfortable than just being in a t-shirt, although I probably could have gone with a t-shirt if I absolutely had to. Hello, Raising. What's going on? Where do I want to start off this show? Unfortunately, I'm going to start here. And this is also going to be a part of Friday's episode in the Unfound, in the news section, is that another one of Unfound's guests has died. It was Donna Jean Cap, who was just a guest of mine this past summer for the disappearance of Dorianne Myers. And even though she wasn't on the program until this past summer, I actually first got to know Donna Jean back in 2016. And it actually took about 2.5 years for her to come on the program. That's a true story. And so if any of you in the past, maybe going back to earlier this year or last year, if you remember me ever talking about how, there's a case that I've been trying to get on the program for 2.5 years, it was Dorianne Myers' case. And what happened was that I had gotten in contact with Donna Jean. I mean, this is well before I had any assistance or anybody. This is when I just had to rely on myself to find guests for the program. And I found Donna Jean, and we talked once. And then after that, she was a little hard to get a hold of. I'm not going to go as far as to say she was avoiding me or anything, but I think that she was nervous about coming on the program. It was very hard for her to talk about Dory's case, even though Donna Jean knows as much as anybody about Dory's disappearance. And, the circumstances, as you now all know, of Dory's disappearance, it's one of the more, I don't want to call it, I wouldn't call it violent. I would say more, I don't know, there's a fire in her house, there's fire in her car. We have these sketches of these guys that she was allegedly with. People were suspicious of her boyfriend at the time. There are all these different things, going on. Somebody, of course, like I said, somebody tried to burn her house to the ground, probably to cover up evidence, etc. I think all of that put together made it hard for Dory or for Donna Jean to actually do an interview. But every once in a while, I would check in with her. I wouldn't even ask her. Sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't. I would just ask her how she was doing, any news, any new news on Dory's case, anything, but I would not bring up her coming on the program, not all the time. And then, when was she on the program? In June or July of this year, of 2019? I think what happened was this, is that, she had been having, I think, some problems, physical problems for a while, and she was fighting them. You can maybe even tell in the interview that I do with her that it's maybe a little hard for her to talk, a little hard for her to breathe. And her attitude was that the doctors were, what she was telling me was that the doctors were eventually going to figure this out because, she wasn't that old. She was in her 60s. But, the way I look at it, back at it now, and you should know that it's been a few weeks since she died. I didn't even know until this past weekend. And I kind of found out even by accident because, I hadn't heard from her for a while, from her in a while. I hadn't seen her post anything. So when I actually started looking into what happened, I went to her Facebook page and I saw the condolences and things. And it's very sad. But what my gut tells me now, hello James, is that she might have known back this summer maybe that, things weren't going well with her health. And I think that she might have decided to do the interview eventually because she thought that she wasn't sure how much longer she was going to be around. I don't know that for a fact. I have never spoken to her husband at all. I couldn't even tell you his name. So I've not had an opportunity to talk to him ever. Not any of the times that I called her or anything else. But I can't help but look back at it now, and the reason she finally decided to come on the program might have been because she thought, if I don't come on the program now, I might not have an opportunity to do the interview ever. And I did talk to her a few times after she was on the program. I even volunteered. She just lived, I don't know, 3.5 to 4 hours north of me here in Florida, up in the Live Oak area. And I told her I'd love to come up some weekend, and because she talked about how she has this, Dory's information and everything, that I would love to, take a look at it. And it may be now that I know that she's deceased, I might think about getting, a hold of that um, material. I'm thinking about that. But, I talked to her a few times after. I talked about her health. She was, feeling positive. But like I said, I don't think that I talked to her since August. And then just this weekend, when I was up in Ocala, I was just sitting there in my hotel room. And hello, Marcy. Hello, Tamara. I was just sitting there in my hotel room, and I was like, yeah, I hadn't heard from her in a while. What's going on? And that's when I found out that she had passed away. I did not see any obituary online. I do not know the circumstances of her death. I don't know. I don't know necessarily what diseases she had. All I know is that there was something going on with her, that she was having, maybe she had COPD or something like that. And, she thought that she was going to find her way through it, but I'm guessing that she didn't. I don't know actually how she died. So, and I started thinking about, you know, she was the point person on Dory's disappearance since the day Dory disappeared. And the last so many years of Donna Jean's life, were very difficult, as you can imagine, as it is, for all of these people that we have on the program. None of them want to leave this earth without, finding out what happened. And, I remember it was a year ago, more than a year ago. Hello, Whitney. That Jessica Curtis died. And, of course, she committed suicide. We now know that for a fact. And I have to admit that I felt some guilt over that. Because, it's very clear to me, had we been able to figure out what happened to Tyler, whatever the situation was, whether, his the stepfather killed him, or somebody else did, or he ran off, or whatever. I mean, some different theories in that case, if you want to go back and listen to it. And, I can't help but think to this day regarding Jessica and her suicide that, had we been able to move the case forward, had we gotten those answers, then she wouldn't have committed suicide a year ago. I remember I was over in Orlando when I found that out. I was over there seeing my sister, her husband, her son, and his kids, and I found out while we were in the car going to play miniature golf. And it really hit me hard. And so, in Donna Jean's case, I don't know if that's, necessarily the same situation. I think that Jessica committed suicide. Probably part of it, if not most of it, was because of Tyler disappearing. Whereas in Donna Jean's case, I think that it was just health problems that, everybody eventually gets. None of us gets out of here alive. But, I did have a long, when I found out that she was deceased, I really did a lot of thinking this weekend about, all these years that she fought to figure out what happened to Dory, and then, to not get those answers before she passed away. And, I just wish that I could have talked to her a little bit more, in September, maybe into October, if she was able to talk before she passed away. Tanya, who committed suicide? Jessica Curtis was the guest for the Tyler Stice episode, which was an episode that came out in late 2017. She committed suicide in October of 2018. And then what I'm talking about now is another one of Unfound's guests has died. Not by a suicide, I don't think. That Donna Jean Cap died. I believe it was from health issues that she was having. And she is the sister of Dorianne Myers, who disappeared here in Florida. What was it, 2004, 2002, somewhere back in the early 2000s. So there you go. Thank you, Fishing. Carrie says we can just hope that her and Dory are together again and she now has all the answers right. Let's hope, Carrie. I mean, everybody has their different belief systems and what they think happens after we die. Some people believe a lot of things happen. Some people believe nothing happens. I'm hopeful that you're right, Carrie. And I know this is just, part of what, I do. I realize that, you do this program long enough and we have 170 episodes or something like that. And most of those have interviews. Some of these people are going to pass away. They are. And, some of them I've gotten to know very, very well. And Donna Jean was one of them, because I had been talking to her for 2.5 years. Some guests I know better than others. That's just the way it works. But Donna Jean is certainly one that I talked to many times through texting, through emails, through Messenger, actually talking on the phone, although we never actually met in person. And, it's very sad. And, life is not fair. It's just not. Some people will go through their entire lives and, death is a part of life. They'll lose their parents and grandparents. But other than that, the kind of just goes, what we think the way should go. It should go. Grandparents and parents die before us. Children die after us. And some people, a lot of people, that's the way it goes. And they never, feel that unusual suffering that can come from a disappearance or a murder or a child dying or, something like that. Most people do not experience those things. But then there are the people who do. And it just doesn't seem fair. I know a lot of people think, well, it's all in God's plan. It's this, it's that. I really don't know. I just try to help these people get the answers that they're looking for. And, we haven't been, these cases are tough. I'm not trying to make any excuses, but these cases are tough and answers are hard to come by, whether they're newer cases or older cases. But, just, looking at Dory's case and, what I know about it and what I remember about it, it's still a case that I think could be solved if somebody wanted to put, 100% of their time into it. I still believe that. Yeah. Valerie, I was just talking about the death of Donna Jean Cap, a former guest of Unfounds from this summer. She died back in October. And I also hate, I hate not finding out for a few weeks. That makes me feel like I'm not keeping up like I should with these people, and that's my fault. So I hate it that I have to find out weeks later that one of my guests died. So there's that. Donna Jean, rest in peace. It was a pleasure to get to know you. It was a pleasure having you on the program. And, here of us still in the material world, we're not going to forget about Dory, and we will do what we can to figure out what happened to her. and if it was a murder of some type or something, hopefully that person or people can be brought to justice. So there's that. Moving on. The poll from this past Friday's case, the disappearance of Timothy Guy. His father, Warren, was on the program. And Warren has quickly become a poster, a person who posts a lot in the discussion group, if you've seen that. A large majority of you believe that Phil's, the farmhand, the supervisor on the farm, that his daughter certainly knows what happened to Timothy. Just within was it yesterday or the day before? With Anthony's permission, who got those messages, I posted the back and forth he had with Dawn maybe a month ago, something like that, and she is wacky. I don't know what to make of her. I don't know her. I've never talked to her personally. I've not exchanged any messages with her, but you can see what she wrote in those messages. On top of, I was shown a message that she had posted back in June where it's like she's talking about Tim's disappearance all over again, but she says this is something recently that happened. I have no idea. She sounds like a whack job to me. In those messages, it's almost like she's flaunting that she knows what happened to Tim, and her heritage is being Italian. You don't mess with Italians. Is she Italian? I have no idea. My mother was Italian. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know if she's just wacky and trying to egg Anthony on, or there is some truth between all of that. So I posted those messages in the group and on the Unfound page so people could see what she wrote. And of course, she can't deny it. Certainly, she wrote those. And if she's ticked off at me or Anthony, then she shouldn't have written those messages in the first place. Carrie says those are fairy telling messages, in my opinion. BA says she's like Tony Soprano on bath salts. That's an interesting image, BA. Mandy, in your email, though, it really made me think about the fake horse show and him having other plans for the weekend. Mandy, that's something that I can't rule out. I really don't know. I mean, would it be possible 32 years later to try to figure out if there was a horse show somewhere in that area that they went to? And maybe. I don't know. I'd certainly like to talk to this Ava person that Warren talked about. Maybe he can get that to happen or something. Maybe I'll get to talk to her. But it's something that I have to be open to, Mandy. Everything is on the table regarding that case. And I just don't want to just so easily dismiss it that Phil did it and that's the end of the story. Well, I don't think it is. I think that a few different avenues need to be investigated if anybody's going to do that. Tamara says, I have Italian heritage. I don't threaten people with that. She's wacky, if you ask me. Yeah. My mother was Italian, Tamara. So I know all about Italians. It's somewhat of a stereotype, I guess, from The Godfather and Goodfellas and everything else. But a large majority of you believe she does know what happened to Tim, and it very well may be that she does. So there's that. Like I said, this show is going to be a little shorter than usual tonight because I have an interview to do in 40 minutes. So I'm just going to keep that in mind as we continue here. This is not going to be some hour and 40-minute show like we did last week or the week before or whatever. We've really been going really long in these shows, and that's fine because I love to do them. But I have another appointment tonight. Paula, if it was a sanctioned AQHA show or something like that, the information might be on record. Maybe somebody wants to look into that, Paula. I guess that's American Quarter Horse Association. That very well could be. Valerie, yeah, I read those some mental or chemical issues as well. We just don't all do that. Okay, Valerie. So there's that. Let's move on to this. I got to talk to, for just a short moment, the mother of Austin Pivo. I don't think I've given an update on that within the last couple weeks. If you remember, there were human remains found on the Fort Hall Reservation in Idaho where Austin disappeared. Susan has still not gotten the results of that DNA test. This is very fitting since this Friday's case, the disappearance that I'll be talking about before the show's over, of Ronald McNutt has some of the same issues regarding DNA. And but I talked to her. She says that they hope to know something before the end of the year. So I guess within the next month and a half. But you have to remember, these remains were found when? Back at the beginning of October, maybe the end of September. It's been a while now. It really has been a while. And I continue to wonder why DNA tests can be done so quickly in a case like the original Night Stalkers, but it takes so long for less than high profile cases, ones that people generally don't know about. I hate that. I gotta tell you, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. But that seems like what's going on in Austin's case, and you will have to be the judge once again when I talk about when you hear the interview I did for Friday's episode. The disappearance of Ronald McNutt, which again I will talk about before the show is over. Hello, Michelle. Good to see you this evening. But so there's that. No new updates with Austin's case. It seems they're still working on it. And as soon as I find out something, you will know something. Something else that's going on to update you on another case regarding Jonathan Estes' case. The trial was supposed to start yesterday regarding his wife Cindy's theft, I guess you would call it, illegal sale of that piece of equipment known as a bobcat. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, please go back and listen to the Jonathan Estes episode. I think it was from July. The trial was supposed to start yesterday. However, in talking to Melissa earlier today, Cindy's lawyer filed for a continuance, meaning the trial did not start yesterday. What does that mean? Don't know. It could mean that they're gathering more evidence. It could mean that maybe Cindy is thinking about some sort of plea bargain. There's a few different possibilities regarding this. However, the most important part is that trial that we were waiting for it to start, it didn't start yesterday. And in fact, it may be that there is no trial. There is none. That's, I think, all I can really say at this point regarding all of that. I'm personally hoping that there is a trial. And so, how much will the prosecutor, bring up about the disappearance? And I don't know. I don't know if he'll be allowed to. I don't know what a judge will say regarding all of that. I have no idea. But certainly, it would be interesting if the trial if it happened, and they got jurors and people were forced to testify under oath, if there would be more information that could come out due to the disappearance itself. However, I have learned some things that Cindy has said to people, although I don't know if I'm at liberty to talk about them right at the second. Melissa told me a couple things today that I think I'm going to keep under my hat. But I just want to inform all of you, that the trial did not start today, and who knows if it will ever happen. Carrie says continuations are typically in a criminal case. Okay, Carrie. Tanya, going back to talk about Dawn in the Timothy Guy case. I just think of the fact that Dawn was only 14 when all this happened. If a dad had her help bury a body, what kind of upbringing is that? Well, that would be something if a father enlisted his 14-year-old daughter, to help. I don't know how much help a 14-year-old daughter would be in digging a hole. I'm not saying there aren't young girls that can't do physical labor, etc. But would he really do that? Enlisting her for something like that. I'm going to think that he probably didn't do that if he is responsible for Tim's disappearance. I'm more inclined to believe probably that he would have enlisted other people and not his daughter, and especially since she was 14. I'd like to at least think that much of him, even though I don't think much of him otherwise. So, there's that regarding Jonathan, regarding Timothy Guy's case, regarding Austin Pivo's case, regarding Jonathan Estes's case. Let's talk about what has gone on we have to talk about this every week because there's always something going on. Let's talk about what has happened in Hemphill County since the last time we met. Of course, last time you saw me on here, we were talking about how Sheriff Lewis is going to resign. Brent Clapp is going to become the sheriff again. I mean, a lot of news coming out of there. Well, since then, all of that has happened. Sheriff Lewis is no longer the sheriff of Hemphill County. He is now a private citizen like the rest of us. And Brent Clapp was sworn in. I saw the pictures of him being sworn in. I think he was wearing some sort of red long sleeve shirt and blue jeans. Even with just knowing that, you'd think it was Texas. And I say that, with all love intended. So he is now the sheriff. He is the official sheriff of Hemphill County. Now, what does this all mean? Carrie says the whole Klinger family sounds whacked. That's probably true, Carrie. What does this mean? I don't know, and here's why. A lot of people for a long time have wanted Sheriff Lewis out of that position. Okay, I don't know if they could have predicted it went down the way it did. I don't think anybody could have predicted that. They were maybe hoping that criminal charges would be filed against him regarding Tom's case and him be let out of his office in handcuffs. I know a lot of people had visions of that. Maybe some people were thinking, well, he's probably going to remain sheriff until the next election and somebody's going to beat him in the election, hopefully. Maybe some people thought he was going to be sheriff for life in Hemphill. I mean, people I've talked to, and there are many, their opinions ran the total range of what was going to go on. But none of them came up with, what actually did happen with Sheriff Lewis resigning or being asked to resign regarding this training stuff, and then Brent Clapp becoming sheriff. We have to remember something. We still don't know who recorded that meeting back in August. It's not funny, it's darkly humorous that has kind of been forgotten. I mean, that's as big as anything that has happened since that is the biggest thing probably that has happened since Thomas's remains were found earlier this year. Easily. And still, it's kind of been forgotten by people. You hardly see anybody write about it anymore, talk about it at all. But we still don't have the answer as to who did that. Now, why am I bringing this up in relation to Brent Clapp becoming sheriff? Well, Brent Clapp was in that meeting. And he was with Sheriff Lewis. And another deputy was there. And of course, a lot of people believe I have no proof that this is the case, but a lot of people believe this. I'm open to a lot of different theories on who recorded the meeting. Um, the popular opinion was that Sheriff Lewis himself recorded the meeting. Well, Brent Clapp was there. Are we saying that, and what are the odds that Brent Clapp knew that Sheriff Lewis was, let's just say if Sheriff Lewis did record the meeting, my inclination would be that Brent Clapp knew that he did it. That would be my first point. That would be my, first idea. That Brent Clapp knows who did that recording, but now he's the sheriff. There's that. Tanya, were these the meetings that they were upset being recorded? They are, Tanya. Andy says it's like a circus in that town. How frustrating for his poor family. Carrie, I'm starting to doubt a recording exists. Well, that's a very provocative statement, Carrie, and I'm just not going to touch it. But we have to remember that. So, if it were me, thank you, Zebra. If it were me, that would be the first thing on my agenda if I were sheriff. The problem, of course, that Brent Clapp was in that meeting, and one of the people who was suspected of recording it was his superior officer, who is now no longer sheriff, Sheriff Lewis. So there's that. I think that if it could be revealed who made this recording, it would say a lot about a lot. I'm not saying it would lead to what happened to Tom Brown, but it might expose even more of what was going on in the sheriff's office if it is proven that one of those three guys from the sheriff's office recorded that. Here's what I do know. I don't believe Penny recorded it. I don't believe Phil Klein recorded it. Simply because of the way the person who runs the Canadian Record has defended how she is not going to reveal who she got the recording from or anything else. The way I think of her, she would never defend Penny. She would never defend Phil Klein. Okay, never. Not with how the Canadian Record and how it's covered Tom Brown's case, what has been written in the Canadian Record, for a couple years now. There's no way that she would defend, protect the privacy of either Penny or Phil Klein. So it has to be somebody else. And that surely narrows who could have done it. Let me read some of these things. Michelle Carey, that has been on the back of my mind ever since I heard about the recording. Michelle's commenting on Carrie's wondering if recording even exists. BA says, wasn't the article a propaganda piece for town? BA, I'm not sure what you mean by that. When it was released that a recording existed, and the Canadian Record wrote about it, it's taken as fact. I don't know. I don't know if it's propaganda implies that it's a lie. I'm in no position to say that any of it's a lie. Even though Carrie's asking, stating she doubts that the recording exists, until somebody shows me proof that the recording doesn't exist and that was just a big lie or whatever, I'm going to continue to believe that it does. And that's why I'm talking about finding out who recorded it, because I don't know if it was criminal or not. It was certainly in bad taste. I said at the time that if somebody would have given me that recording, I would have never said anything to anybody about it and wouldn't have accepted it, given the way that it was done. That's my standard. But BA says, I thought it was sort of cherry-picked. BA, I don't know. That's not how I really remember it, BA. I just know that They had this meeting. After the meeting came out, there was recording, there was a transcript. Somehow the Canadian Record got it, but they won't release the actual recording. All they want to do is write about it. My opinion is the reason they won't release the recording is because if we hear the recording, I think we'll be able to tell who recorded it. That's my opinion. I don't know that for a fact. That's my opinion. Carrie says, furthermore, if Penny or Klein would have done it, they certainly would not give it to the Record when other papers have been more supportive of them. That's true too, Carrie. So, getting back to Brent Clapp, I don't know what to make of all this. I should say this. Unfortunately, I did not get to listen to the Lewis and Clapp interviews before I did the show last week. I had an opportunity to do that after. Probably the biggest thing that came out of either, first of all, Nathan Lewis to me sounded like the biggest liar in the world in his interview, my opinion. The way he continued to say, you mean that's not the way you do it? Well, I thought that was the way. Well, I'm sure darn sorry that that's not the way I do it. I thought, come on now. Come on. And you could even tell the guys that were asking him questions, you can tell by the tone of their voices, like, is this guy really answering these questions this way? Probably the biggest thing that came out to me is there is no doubt that Brent Clapp believes or believed that the video was working at Franck's on the night Tom disappeared. Why? Because Sheriff Lewis told him so. Now this is a huge deal. Huge. This is not quite as big as Tom's remains being found, but it's up there. That if this is true, and Lewis was telling the truth, I know he's a lot of a liar. I don't know why he'd necessarily make that up, though. And Brent Clapp isn't lying, then there's something going on with the video at Franck's. And I think that I can be forthright enough to tell you that I've talked to Penny about the Franck's stuff months ago. You know, she and I have had conversations about, because I think the problem is that people are under the impression that the video at Franck's never worked. It did work. And in fact, the video at Franck's worked a month. In October of 2016, a month before Tom disappeared. It was working a month before, and I can't tell you how I know that, but I know that. And then it's not working a month later. The story that the owner has given is he was converting over to a new system. Maybe he was going from VHS tapes to digital, I don't know. And he hadn't quite gotten all of the bugs out of it yet. Possible. But I sure would like to see proof of that through receipts and other things to prove that he actually did get a new system. Because there is no doubt, if you listen to Brent Clapp's interview, when it does go over and stray into Tom Brown stuff, there's no doubt that Sheriff Lewis told him that there is a video from Franck's, and that video does exist from Franck's that night. There's no doubt. Tala, Clapp is a politician. He wants to look good for the citizens of Canadians. Sat on some things way too long, in my opinion. I find the timing of some of his statements interesting. Shelley says, Lewis sounds like a child caught in a lie. That's certainly true. Tanya says, I have not read the transcripts. I'm behind. Mandy says, sounds extremely sketchy. Tanya, there are no transcripts. There was a link in the discussion group on Facebook where you could go to a certain site and listen to both interviews with both Lewis and Clapp. Keep in mind, this is not about Tom Brown's stuff. This is about the training stuff. But in Brent Clapp's interview, they kind of stray into it because of what Brent says about how he knew that in the past, Sheriff Lewis had altered or had fabricated some paperwork regarding training, and he thought that Sheriff Lewis was capable of that because he knew that Sheriff Lewis had fabricated some paperwork for a missing persons case that we now know for sure was Tom's. But in that interview, once again, just in passing, there is no doubt that Brent Clapp believes that there is video from Franck's from the night that Tom disappeared. Now, I will tell you that I've had, I think what I'm stating now, and at least one person gave me a hard time about this after last week's show, when I said I've kind of, in so many words, suspected that all along. And I'm not trying to be hindsight 2020 or a know-it-all or anything like that. I'm just trying to use what I think I've learned about all these disappearances we've covered. And when I did the interview with Penny in the summer of 2018, I was under the impression that the Franck's video never worked. That's the way I remember it. I could be wrong, but my impression was that the video didn't work. It maybe never worked or hadn't worked for a long time. And I was like, well, that's nuts. I worked for 7-Eleven back, for 10 months back in 1999, in 1998 to 1999. Now, granted, it's 20 years ago and technology and everything has changed so much since then. But, I went into many stores where the cameras were there, the tapes were in the machine, but they weren't recording anything. So in my world, my experience, that sounds possible. That the cameras just weren't working. Maybe ever. But now, this year, I was able to find out that at some point in 2016, not long before Tom disappeared, the video was working at Franck's. And when I found that out, I started thinking, what are the odds that the cameras just wouldn't happen to be working on the night that Tom disappeared? And see, those are the things that, once again, with my personal experience, I start to look at and say, well, that sort of does sound weird. And I think a lot of people would feel that way. So when Brent Clapp says that, it's not exactly startling to me. That he says it so quickly, so smoothly, so easily is maybe the big surprise to me. Because that's big news in the Tom Brown disappearance world. Shelly says, Franck's is an unmanned truck stop for gassing up with credit cards. Only can't imagine not having circuit cans up and running. Shelly, I tend to agree with you, but, technology problems happen, things happen. So, but if you haven't listened to those interviews yet, please go. If you don't know how to find them, if you are on Facebook in the discussion group, just kind of scroll down there and you will find them. There will be a link to about how Lewis is going to be resigning, etc. If you go to that story, if you go down to the bottom, you'll see the two interviews. All you have to do is press the arrow and they'll play. They are fairly long, not as long as your average Unfound episode. So that was, that's big news. And, it's easy for me to talk what I would do if I was, the new sheriff of Hemphill County, because I'm not involved in the disappearance. I have no connections to Sheriff Lewis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The problem with Brent Clapp is he does. He has connections to Brent Clapp, or to Lewis. They have been working together for a while. He chose to stay on after James Pearson left, one of the few that did. Okay? It's obvious Brent Clapp knew that Sheriff Lewis was fabricating stuff and never said anything about it. On and on and on. So his credibility is damaged. But I think what would raise his credibility, even though I know that Hemphill County is not on Thomas's case now, it's out of their hands. If he wanted to really raise his credibility very high, he could get to the bottom of the Franck's video question. Being that he himself brought it up, if he wanted to gain the confidence of people in Hemphill County, he could get to the bottom of that. If I was in his shoes, that's what I would do. He's not going to listen to me, but that's what I would do. So that's all. Once again, we only have about 13 more minutes. I want to touch upon one more thing, and then we will be going to talk about Friday's episode. Let me just read this, though. Mimi, Brent was in a very close working relationship with Nathan Lewis. There's no doubt in my mind that Brent knew far more than he has told so far. They watched Penny and Agonizing Greek Dreadful. Paula, I'm going to suggest that if you enjoy these Wednesday night shows, you should give the Think Tank a try. Yes, Paula. Paula is talking to all of you. If you do enjoy these YouTube shows on Wednesday night, I urge you to become a Patreon member. And you'll get to see me do this twice a week, and where we talk about that week's case exclusively. And we get really deep into the details of the disappearance. Okay, it is a think tank where all we do is a lot of thinking, theorizing, and things. I think that anybody who gets involved can learn a lot about not just about that case for that week, but disappearances in general. Thank you for pointing that out, Paula. I had mentioned that next Friday, not November 22nd, which is in a couple days, which is going to be the disappearance of Ronald McNutt. But next Friday, the interview that I'm doing tonight is going to be the first one released of one of what have been calling a behind-the-scenes investigation that Unfound has been doing. I thought it was about time, and that will, when the episode comes out, I will gladly explain to all of you what I mean by that. This is going to be a rare episode in which, of course, there is going to be an interview, but it may be that my summation could be the longest in Unfound history, given what I've been through regarding this case over the course of 2019. Things that I have done on my own for this particular case. Way more than any case I've ever covered, including Tom Brown's case. Easily. What I've done in this case far surpasses that. And I hope to be able to do more of these. We are working on a couple other things behind the scenes that I guess eventually will get covered as episodes. But I just thought it was the time was right to bring this particular case to the public. It was one that I found out about. I've been talking to this young man's mother for a while now, and she was able to give me a lot of information, and I took that information and kind of did my own investigation. Going back, talking to some of the witnesses, finding out much more than I think the family knew, and giving that information back to them. So that's going to be next Friday. As for this Friday, it's the disappearance of Ronald McNutt. He disappeared from Corning, California on May 4th, 2004. It's a unique case. I think that if you look it up, you will find out why. This is the first Unfound case in which a person goes missing, but remains have been found. Now you say, well, Ed, I thought you don't do that. Well, I don't do that. The big problem in this case is that these remains were found, but they haven't been identified yet, even though they were found in Ronald McNutt's truck. The issue is that he disappeared in 2004. His truck was found in a ravine in Northern California in 2014, but it was so down into this ravine out in the middle of nowhere that they didn't pull it out of this ravine until 2017, so 3 years after it was found. And it was only then that they discovered there was a human skull in it. And as I was talking earlier about Austin Pivo's case, it's been over 2 years, and the DNA for that skull has still not been tested to see if it is actually Ronald McNutt or not. Now you may say, well, this sounds like a pretty open and shut case, Ed. Well, it's not. And that's another reason that we're covering it. We don't know that it's Ronald McNutt's skull in the truck because, once again, it has not been scientifically proven. And there were things that were going on before Ronald McNutt within his marriage, before he disappeared, and then things after after he disappeared that could lead us to believe that even if that is Ronald McNutt's skull in his truck, that it could be that he was murdered. That will be for all of you to decide this Friday. And you're going to hear me go on a little bit of a rant, as I kind of did tonight, about how these high-profile cases, their DNA tests can be done like that, and then the lesser-known cases, like all of the ones we cover on Unfound, their DNA tests, it just seems go very, very slowly. And it's not right. It's not right at all. And I talk about that in my summation. Marcy says, double the fun. Oh, seeing me twice a week instead of once? Absolutely, Marcy. Absolutely. On Wednesday, I'd love for you to become, I'd love for anybody to become part of the think tank. We do those shows, the think tanks, on Facebook. Mandy says, can't wait to hear it. Both Fridays. Karen, I don't know how you manage multiple cases at once without mixing details. You must have a very organized mind. Well, Karen, it was not easy at the beginning, but after 170 cases, it does get easier. And what helps me is that I do take, very detailed notes when I talk to people originally and put them in files and everything else. So what keeps me organized is just taking those notes and making sure I understand them. And that's kind of what keeps me organized. Paula, do you suggest we look into the cases before your interview or after? Always waited to hear your episode. Just curious. Paula, I post, the links and things like that, hoping that people will at least kind of learn a little bit. I don't know if I like anybody to go into any of these episodes totally cold. But that's everybody's opinion. I think you could do it. You could just avoid everything that I post before an episode comes out. Totally fine. But I also post things for people who like to check up on things beforehand. You can have it either way. What do I suggest? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just trying to provide, because I know people have different tastes on what they want to do. So I try to make it so that it's possible to have those different tastes. If you want to know a lot before the interview comes out, or if you want to know nothing. So I don't know, whatever works best for you, Paula. Hello, Joyce. Good to see you tonight, Joyce. And it was a pleasure talking to you about a week and a half ago. Joyce, one of my favorite guests. Good to see you. But unfortunately, Joyce and everybody else, I have to be going. It was great to talk to all of you tonight. I'm sure I had to cut this short, but when people want to do interviews, I got to do them. So you will hear me on Friday for Ronald McNutt's case. And then for those of you in the think tank, I'm disc golfing outside of town, but I should be back in time for us to do the think tank at the regular time of 7 o'clock. If I don't think that's going to happen, I'll let you all know. But I'll see you all. You'll hear me on Friday. Thanks, everyone, for joining in tonight. Great discussion, and I will talk to all of you later. Good night.